Whoreson, The Story of a Ghetto Pimp by Goines. Chapter 1. From what I have been told, it is easy to imagine the cold, bleak day when I was born into this world. It was December 10th, 1940, and the snow had been falling continuously in Detroit all that day. The cars moved slowly up and down Hastings Street, turning the white flakes into slippery slush. Whenever a car stopped in the middle of the street, a prostitute would get out of it, or a whore would dart from one of the darkened doorways and get into the car. Jessie, a tall black woman with high, narrow cheekbones, stepped from a Trix car, holding her stomach. Her dark, piercing eyes were flashing with anger. She began cursing the driver, using the vilest language imaginable about his parents and the nature of his birth. The driver, blushing with shame, drove away, leaving her behind in the falling snow. Slush from the spinning tires spattered her as she held onto a cart for support. She unconsciously rubbed her hand across her face to wipe away the tears that mingled with snowflakes. Two prostitutes standing across the street in the silver-lined doorway, an old dilapidated bar that catered to hustling girls, watched her curiously. Before she could move, another car stopped behind her. She turned and stared at the white face leering over the steering wheel. The driver noticed as she turned that her stomach was exceptionally large. Guessing her condition, he drove on. She stood holding her stomach and watching the car move down the street until it stopped near a group of women in front of a bar. She started to move towards the sidewalk, but her legs gave out on her, and she fell into the slush in the street. From the darkened doorways, prostitutes of various complexions ran to the stricken woman's aid. Before, where there had been closed windows, there now appeared heads of different shapes and sizes. "Bring that crazy whore up here," a stout woman yelled from a second-story window, while four women half carried and half dragged Jessie up the stairs. A young girl, still in her teens, yelled to the woman in the window, "I think she gonna have that damn baby, Big Mama." The large woman in the window looked down at the girl, amused. "It's about time she had it, girl. Seems she been sticking out for a whole year." Big Mama started to close the window, then added, "You run down the street and get that nigger doctor, girl, and don't stop for no tricks." The young girl started off for the doctor, muttering under her breath. She ducked her head and pulled up her collar in an attempt to cut off the chilling wind. When a car stopped and the driver blew his horn, she ignored the call for business and continued on her errand. Big Mama's living room was full of prostitutes, sitting and standing around, gossiping. It was rare for a woman to have a baby on the streets. Also, it gave them an excuse to come in out of the snow. "What the hell Jessie working out in this kind of weather for? Ain't she or her man save no money?" a short brown-skinned dimpled woman asked. The room became quiet until another woman spoke up. "You know goddamn well that black-ass bastard she had for a pimp run off last week with some white whore," she said harshly. "He jumped on Jessie and took all the money she been saving to get in the hospital with, too." The comments started up gossip on the merits of various pimps. Then suddenly, a slap and the sound of a baby yelling came to them, and everyone became silent. Big Mama put out the few girls who had remained in the bedroom, then took the baby from the doctor and carried it towards the bed. Her large face was aglow with happiness as she smiled at the woman lying in her bed. "You can be glad of one thing, Jessie. This baby don't belong to that nigger of yours that's gone," she said while turning the baby around so the mother could see it. "Looks like you done went and got you a trick baby, honey. Boy, for a child as black as you, I sure don't see how you got one this light." Jessie raised herself and stared at the bundle Big Mama held. "Oh my God," she cried and fell back onto the bed. Big Mama stepped back from the bed, shocked, and held the baby tighter. Her dark face, just a shade lighter than Jessie's, was filled with concern. She had never had a child of her own. Like many women who have been denied offspring, she had an overwhelming love for children. Her voice took on a tone that all the prostitutes working out of her house respected. When she spoke this way, they listened, perhaps because she weighed over 300 pounds and had been known to knock down men with one swing of her huge hands. She spoke, and only her voice could be heard in the house. "If you don't want this baby, Jessie, I'll take him." Her eyes were full of tears as she looked down at the tiny bundle in her arms. "You can damn well bet he'll have good taken care of, too." The small, elderly, balding doctor cleared his throat. He held out a birth certificate. "I'll have to get on to my other calls, so please give me a name for the little fat fella." Jessie stared at the bundle Big Mama held. All the black curls covering the baby's head only inflamed her anger. Her eyes were filled with blind rage as she turned and stared at the doctor. He stepped back unconsciously. Here, he thought, was a woman who had been badly misused by some man. He hoped that he would never again see so much hate in a woman's eyes. Jessie laughed suddenly, a cold, nerve-tingling sound. Big Mama shivered with fear, not for herself, but for the tiny life she held in her arms. "Well, Mrs. Jones," the doctor inquired, "have you decided on what to call your baby?" "Of course, Doc. I've got just a name for the little son of a bitch. Whoreson. Whoreson Jones." The doctor looked as if he had been struck by lightning. His mouth gaped, and he stared at her dumbfounded. Big Mama was the first to recover. "You can't do that, Jessie. Give the child a good Christian name." "Christian name, hell," Jessie replied sharply. "I'm naming my son just what he is. I'm a whore, and he's my son. If he grows up ashamed of me, the hell with him. That's what I'm wanting to name him, and that's what it's going to be. Whoreson."